Zay Flowers could be on the verge of having the season that completely changes his career with the Baltimore Ravens. After 3 years of showing constant improvement, leadership, and better numbers every season, the wide receiver enters 2026 with everything he needs to go from being a great young player to becoming one of the most dangerous offensive weapons in the NFL. But the biggest question is, why is there so much belief that this massive jump is about to happen right now? Because something different is happening in Baltimore. A new offensive system could put Flowers in even better situations. His connection with Lamar Jackson is stronger than ever, and the franchise believes he still hasn't reached his full potential. But there's one important detail in this story that could decide whether we're about to witness a historic season or whether the Ravens will have to pay a much bigger price to keep one of their biggest stars. And today, you're going to understand exactly why Zay Flowers could be ready to break out. If I had to pick one player who could surprise a lot of people this season, honestly, Zay Flowers would be right at the top of my list. I've followed his development since he arrived in Baltimore, and the feeling I get is that we're watching a player who keeps getting better every single year. He's not the type of player who has one great season and then disappears. That's not Flowers. He has been building his career step by step, and in my opinion, he's reaching the point where he can finally take that next leap and enter the conversation among the best wide receivers in the entire NFL. What's most impressive is that he's already putting up elite production without even reaching his ceiling yet. In just 3 seasons, Flowers has led the Ravens in targets, receptions, and receiving yards every single year. That doesn't happen by accident. When a player can maintain that level of consistency from the beginning of his career, it tells you there's something special there. And looking at the current situation in Baltimore, I truly believe Flowers has everything he needs to turn a great career into a superstar career. It feels like all the pieces are finally starting to come together around him. The interesting thing is that the NFL has shown us many times how a player can completely change his level when he finds the right environment. Last season, we saw something similar happen with Jackson Smith-Njigba, who went from being a promising young receiver to becoming one of the most dominant players in the league. And when I look at Flowers, I see a lot of the same signs. There's a talent, there's a confidence from the coaching staff, there's a chemistry with his quarterback, and there's an entire organization believing in his growth. In my opinion, it would honestly be more surprising if he didn't make that jump than if he exploded in 2026. And maybe the biggest sign that something special is coming is the confidence inside the locker room. The Ravens believe Flowers can become the face of their passing attack for years to come. And honestly, I believe that too. But what caught my attention the most wasn't just his improvement on the field. It was a major change behind the scenes that could accelerate his growth even more. Baltimore brought in a new offensive coordinator, and Flowers' first impressions of him have been so exciting that even fans are starting to dream bigger. And that's exactly where the story continues. When we look at the biggest jumps in performance that happen in the NFL, there's almost always a major change happening behind the scenes. And in Zay Flowers' case, that change is a name, Declan Doyle. The Ravens' new offensive coordinator arrived with a mission of modernizing the offense and creating smarter ways to put his best players in positions to succeed. And the more I learn about Doyle's approach, the more I understand why there is so much excitement in Baltimore. We're not just talking about a new coach. We're talking about someone who could completely change the way Flowers is used on the field. What caught my attention the most was Flowers' own excitement when talking about Doyle. Normally, players give pretty standard answers when they're asked about new coaches. They usually say the right things, but you don't always hear genuine excitement. That wasn't the case here. Flowers made it very clear how impressed he has been with Doyle's ideas. During mandatory minicamp, he said, "He's a genius. He has stuff that I've never seen before. Plays and routes and things to help you get open. He teaches you in a certain way where you remember the plays without feeling too much pressure. But he also gives you a lot of information. Sometimes I'm like, hey, coach, slow down, slow down." But he's a genius. We've been loving it so far. And honestly, when a player at Flowers' level gives that kind of praise, it's something worth paying attention to. There's another important piece to this story as well. Doyle has spent years learning from some of the most respected offensive minds in the NFL. That means he's bringing modern concepts, creative route combinations, and a different vision for how to attack defenses and create space. Instead of simply asking Flowers to beat defenders with pure talent, the idea seems to be creating situations where he already has an advantage before the ball is even thrown. And when you take an explosive player like Flowers and start designing smarter ways to get him into open space, the chances of a special season increase dramatically. That's why I truly believe Doyle could be one of the biggest factors in the Ravens' offense this season, because Flowers' talent was never the problem. What may have been missing was someone who could design a system capable of maximizing that talent at the highest possible level. And if that happens, opposing defenses are going to have a massive problem trying to slow him down. But there's another reason why I believe Flowers could be ready for this breakout. Because besides having a new offensive coordinator, he also has something many receivers around the NFL would love to have: a connection that continues to grow with one of the best quarterbacks in the world. One thing I've learned from following the NFL over the years is that great wide receivers are almost always connected to great quarterbacks. Of course, individual talent matters a lot. But when there is trust, chemistry, and a strong connection between the player throwing the ball and the player catching it, the results can be incredible. And that's exactly what is happening between Zay Flowers and Lamar Jackson. The two are entering their fourth season together, and every year this partnership continues to get stronger. When Flowers entered the league in 2023, he was still learning the details of the professional game. At the same time, Lamar was learning what made his new target special and understanding how to use his strengths. That kind of connection doesn't happen overnight. It's built through hundreds of practices, meetings, games, and pressure situations. But now, the feeling is that these two players understand each other almost naturally. Lamar knows where Flowers likes to receive the ball, while Flowers understands exactly how his quarterback reacts when a play doesn't go according to plan. And this is especially important because Lamar Jackson is not an ordinary quarterback. We're talking about a player who has already won the league MVP award twice and has the ability to create plays when everything seems lost. Many times, a play that is designed to last 3 seconds turns into a 6 or 7-second improvisation because of Lamar's mobility. In those moments, receivers need to know exactly how to react. And there aren't many players who seem as comfortable in those situations as Flowers. The more time these two spend playing together, the more dangerous this combination becomes. In my opinion, this could be one of the biggest advantages for the Ravens this season. While some teams are still trying to build chemistry between their quarterbacks and receivers, Baltimore already has an established partnership that allows the offense to operate at a much higher level from the very beginning of the season. And when you combine an innovative offensive coordinator, an elite quarterback, and a rising star receiver, the result becomes extremely difficult to stop. But what's even more impressive is that we're not just talking about projections or expectations. The numbers show that Flowers is already producing like one of the best receivers in the NFL. A lot of times, when players consider a breakout candidate, everything is based on potential. Analysts say he could become this or that, but the results haven't fully arrived yet. With Zay Flowers, the situation is different. What stands out to me is that he is already producing at an elite level. This isn't a conversation about a player who still needs to prove he belongs. The conversation is about how far he can go from a foundation that is already incredibly strong. The numbers tell the story. In each of his 3 NFL seasons, Flowers has led the Ravens in targets, receptions, and receiving yards. That means he didn't just quickly become the team's top receiver. He has continued to hold that role year after year. And what's even more impressive is that his numbers have continued to improve. Instead of staying the same, he has shown consistent growth, and that's usually a great sign for players entering the physical and technical prime of their careers. Last season was the biggest example of that progress. Flowers finished the year with 1,211 receiving yards, putting him among the top receivers in the entire NFL. In a league filled with elite talent at the position, reaching that level of production is already a major accomplishment. And when you look at the bigger picture, you realize he still has room to grow. Baltimore has historically not been known as a team that produces huge numbers from its wide receivers. Even so, Flowers has already placed his name among the best players at the position. That's exactly why the expectations surrounding him continue to rise. The numbers are already there. The talent has already been proven. The confidence from the organization is already there. What many people believe now is that we could be watching the perfect combination of opportunity and ability coming together. And when that happens in the NFL, the results can be massive, maybe so massive that the Ravens will need to act quickly to avoid a problem that could cost the franchise millions of dollars.
If you're enjoying this breakdown, smash that like button to help the purple flock grow.
If Baltimore truly believes Zay Flowers will be one of the central pieces of the franchise's future, then maybe the time to make a move is right now. And I say that because the NFL has shown us over and over again what happens when teams wait too long to extend their young stars. The better the player performs, the more expensive he becomes. That's simply how the market works. And in Flowers' case, there's a very real possibility that his value could explode if he has the kind of season many people are expecting. The comparison made in the report is very interesting. Recently, several wide receivers have received massive contracts, including players with similar or even less impressive resumes than Flowers. One example mentioned was Drake London, who signed a 4-year extension worth $141 million. When you compare their careers, there's a very strong argument that Flowers has already built a resume just as impressive as London's. And naturally, that gives Flowers even more leverage when contract negotiations happen. Flowers himself has already made his mindset clear. Instead of focusing on money, he prefers a focus on improvement. In April, the receiver said, "I just want to get better every year and improve every year on everything. Not prove to people, but prove to myself what I know I can do and just go out there and be the best player I know I can be every week." And honestly, that's exactly the mentality you want to see from a player who is entering the prime of his career. That's why I have a feeling the Ravens are racing against the clock. If they sign an extension now, they will probably have to pay a huge amount of money. But if Flowers truly reaches the level many people expect this season, that same contract could look like a bargain just a few months later. And maybe that's the biggest point of this entire story. We're not just watching the development of a very talented player. We could be witnessing the exact moment when Zay Flowers stops being a promising young receiver, stops being just a rising star, and becomes recognized as one of the most dominant wide receivers in the NFL. Zay Flowers enters 2026 in a completely different position from where he was when he first arrived in the NFL. He has already proven that he can be the Baltimore Ravens' top receiving option. He has improved every single season, and now he finds himself in the perfect situation to reach another level. His explosive ability, his growing connection with Lamar Jackson, the arrival of Declan Doyle, and an offensive system that could better highlight receivers all create massive expectations for what he can accomplish. In my opinion, the most interesting part of this entire story is that Flowers no longer needs to prove he belongs in the NFL. He has already earned his place. The real question now is whether he can turn all of his talent and potential into a dominant season that puts his name among the best wide receivers in the league. And if that happens, the Ravens won't just have an important player for the present. They'll have one of the biggest offensive building blocks for the future of the franchise. Now I want to hear your opinion. Do you believe Zay Flowers is ready to make that leap and become a true NFL superstar in 2026? Let me know what you think in the comments. Because one thing is certain. If Flowers reaches a level many people expect, Baltimore could be watching the rise of a player who will leave his mark in Ravens history.
And if you're a true Ravens fan and love keeping up with everything happening around the team, don't leave this video without sharing it with a friend who's just as passionate. They're definitely going to enjoy this. See those videos on your screen right now? I picked the first one especially for you, and the other is recommended by YouTube. Go check them out, and I'll see you in the next video.